Welcome, everyone. It's a Friday, and that means we're having Friday Forum today. My name is Cyndy McDonald. I am the originator. I created Friday Forums in 2020, and here we are and still going strong. And it's been such a pleasure to work with all of the amazing people that have been guests on my show. And we have another amazing guest with me today, April Miller. Glad to have you, April.
Thank you so much, Cyndy. Thanks for inviting me.
So as you log in, one of the things we'd love to have you do is put in the chat a little bit about yourself, put your name and your location, because we love, April, to see where you're from. Also, I want each of you to see where you're from. We also are going to be talking about neurodivergent students, transition, how to support them. This is a topic I cover in my special issues class for UCLA, which April was a student in my class, and now she's a guest on my show. And so we want you to answer this question. Do you work with neurodivergent students, or do you want to work with neurodivergent students? And April, you can see we're getting people in here already. We've got Maggie and Betsy and Ellen was in your class. And
yeah.
So tell us if you work with neurodivergent students, or if you want to. And the other thing is what do you want to learn today? So April and I are going to have a conversation. You know to put your comments in, chat is for discussion, and we'll put your questions in the question and answer section. And we'll have a really great time talking about how we can help these students and their parents, because there's some resources, and April's going to share with you information about her new foundation and what that looks like. And she's got tons of resources. So April, so glad to have you. And you're done with your UCLA certificate now, right?
Yes, I am.
And so you're now a proud graduate, and you can put that on your credentials. Are you working on anything else right now?
Well, I do intend to get my CEP, but it'll take a few years, I know. So, but that's the next thing on the horizon.
Oh, good. Okay. So, we've been doing these study groups. Many of you have been participating in the CEP study groups, and we'll do another one in a few years. I'll try and do them once a year so that you can participate when it's time. So the foundation is the LDND foundation.com, and your organization is ldcollegeexperts.com. For those of you to know, April is located in St. Petersburg, Florida. So she is on the total opposite coast from me here in California. So April, what is your background? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to this stage of working with neurodivergent students.
Sure. So my first career was as a speech language pathologist, and I did that career for about 14 years. I worked with children from birth to 18 and their families, and I worked with students who had a variety of different kinds of communication disorders, different syndromes, learning disabilities, related disorders, medical issues. And I worked in different parts of the country. I worked in clinics and schools. I worked in private practice. And ultimately, I became a part-time college professor. So I taught speech and language development courses to undergraduate students getting their bachelor's in the field. And then I shifted into supervising graduate students, and I worked with them as a clinical supervisor. So they would be doing therapy with their clients in the clinic, and I would observe them and work with them, teach them therapy techniques, how to do assessments, how to write reports, how to talk to families about the therapy. And over the years, families would often say to me, especially the middle school and high school kids, what is there after high school? What kind of support if my student wants to go into higher education, or if they want to go into the workforce? What's out there? And my answer was always, I have no idea. It's beyond my scope. And I got tired of not knowing, and I started to go online and look and read about all of the colleges around the United States that were developing incredible learning support services and programs. And I decided to pivot my career and become an IEC so that I can continue serving a population of people who learn differently and their families, but on to the next level of their education. So that's what I did.
So it sounds like a progressive, a very organic transformation of serving these students and then seeing what their need is and then trying to fill that need and moving you in this direction. So what is the challenge? What's the primary challenge that you see that the students face in this transition? You know, as you said, parents are asking you about what do I go do next? So what does that look like? And what are the answers to that question?
Sure. So one of the biggest challenges is that families have worked so hard from K through 12 to ensure that their students are getting the supports that they need in the schools. And it's unknown to them what happens in college. And so a lot of what parents don't realize is the laws that govern what's required to be provided in college are very different for what's provided prior to your student turning 18. And so self-advocacy becomes a huge part of the conversation I have with families from the very start. I am equally a process-oriented and outcomes-driven educational consultant, which means throughout the process of working with students, I'm really inviting and encouraging and prompting the students to step up and take a very proactive role in understanding how they learn differently, what the supports are that they need, and to help them when they go to college to know that they're going to have to ask for the help that they want. It's not automatically going to be given. And so they really need to develop that self-advocacy piece. The second area that I think really challenges people is parents say, how do we know if our student has the readiness skills for college? And if they don't, and that's their ambition, what do they do? So there are some really phenomenal transition programs. Some people call them gap programs. Some of them are post-secondary, postgraduate year, internship programs, travel programs that are specifically created for students who learn differently to help them develop the skills that they've had so much support with in high school, so that it's a transitionary step between high school and college. They go out on their own, they're not living under their parents' roof, you know, they're navigating their own life, developing independent living skills, and a lot of other things, and they have the support, and the support is gradually weaned off until they're ready to make that leap to go to college. So those are the two things, self-advocacy skills, and then the transition piece.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think both for neurotypical students and neurodivergent students that is we pay the least attention to oftentimes as counselors and advisors. And I know that's something I try to cover a lot in my UCLA class too, is think about the transition and what is that going to look like. So this question's already been posted in the chat, and it looks like we're starting to have questions come in the question and answer. So as you have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A, and we'll be able to, April has tons of resources to share, and she's going to take you onto her website. We're going to have you talk about the LDND Foundation and just all those different things, because as you said, these are questions not only parents and students have, but counselors have too. So, but let's first talk about the application itself. One of the big debated questions is, should students divulge? At what point do they say, okay, do they reveal I have a learning difference? Should they never put it in? Should they always put it in? Does it depend? What is your approach to that?
Yes, I'm so glad that we're opening up and talking about this. It's such an important topic. So if a student has learning supports in high school that are enabling them to be successful academically, then they absolutely want to make sure that they're going to a college that's also going to provide those supports. And the only way to get those supports set up is to disclose that you have learning challenges. And so the documentation that families have on their students, neuropsych or psychology reports, other reports from speech pathologists, other therapists, psychologists who deal with mental health, as well as an IEP or a 504 plan. All of these documents should be shared with the college and shared with the Learning Support Office. It's important to know that every college has their own name for what their office is. Some of them call it Disability Services. Some of them have kind of gotten with the times and they call it the Office of Accessibility, which takes the stigma out of disability. But I always recommend to students to connect with the people who run those offices so they can find out what supports they have. And in terms of applying to colleges, many colleges will have a box on the application that says, you know, are you looking for learning support services? Are you, intending to participate in our program? And this will come up more later. I'll talk about kind of the variety of services that schools offer. But some of the Office of Accessibility departments at colleges actually have a separate application that is required for students to fill out and submit as they're going through the process of applying to the college. So the college admissions office gets the regular application. The Office of Accessibility gets the LD application. There are many colleges also that don't have it as a simultaneous process. So it may be you apply to the college first. If you accept, they accept you, you accept them, you enroll, you put your deposit down, and then you contact the LD office to provide your paperwork and start the process with what services you want. There is no negative downside to telling the college about your disability. Oftentimes, and especially now with COVID and virtual learning, when the colleges get the transcript and they see that there's a period of time that the grades are much lower, they wonder, what's that about? And if you disclose, well, I have a disability and virtual learning was really challenging for me, it helps the colleges understand the gap between your aptitude and your current academic performance. And so when they have a reason and a rationale to say, okay, this student was a strong student, they struggled this particular year. Or maybe it's the other way around, a student didn't have a diagnosis of a learning difference until their grades were struggling, and then they got the diagnosis, and then they got supports and their grades went up. So either way, it helps clarify for the college. And it shows the college that a student understands who they are and what they need to learn most effectively. There are some people fear, and I get asked this question a lot, if we disclose the disability, will it bias the admissions staff into not wanting to accept my student because they have challenges? Colleges want students who can be successful, students who are strong self-advocates, who know what they need and ask for what they need, have set up themselves for much better success than students who don't. So it's always advantageous to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. You wouldn't want to go to a college that's not going to accept you based on your learning differences. And the colleges are trying to put together an eclectic class. And so they don't want people all be the same. So knowing that can actually become a benefit. But you want to, as you said, you want to have a college that can provide the support services that will benefit you. So then that becomes one of the questions you ask. So let's go to Betsy has a great question. She said she wants to hear about specific readiness skills transition program resources to direct students through.
Sure. So that's great. So readiness skills and transition programs. Okay, so readiness skills. I had the pleasure of going through my training to do this work with Judy Bass of Bass Educational Services. She's been in this industry for over 20 years. And she has a wonderful presentation she does called Fostering Independence. And in her presentation, she shares 5 skills that are the first stop at looking at readiness. And those 5 skills are, can your student do the following? Can they set an alarm? Can they get themselves up and going during the day? Can they manage their own schedule? Number 2, can they cook for themselves? Number 3, can they do their own laundry? Number 4, can they talk about their disability? Do they know what medication they're on for it, the dosage of the medication? And can they advocate and manage that? And the 5th one is, other daily living skills? Are they prepared to be able to live on their own and manage those daily living skills? So that's a good starting place. But the independent living skills and being able to do those things is only one piece of looking at college readiness. Of course, we talk about in our profession the three-legged stool, the financial, the academic, and the personal fit. And the academic fit, obviously, is what I focus on often, first and foremost, with students. So to determine academic readiness, we have to look at what supports they had in high school, and then looking at the colleges, can they get the same level of support that they needed to be successful? And what kinds of schools students go to often plays into that. There are certain schools that have a lot of staff people that layer in a lot of scaffolding, and then there are some schools that don't, and parents get it privately outside. So it's really looking at what system has been in place for a student to make them successful academically, in high school. And the other piece, which is the personal social fit, is social skills. There are a lot of students who have challenges with their social skills, and going to college means you have to navigate living with a roommate. You want to build social relationships with friends. You want to have good rapport with your teachers and other adults on campus. So that's a component as well. And in terms of transition, all of these different skill areas are offered in transition programs. Some programs are quite extensive, and they offer, support in all of these areas. And then there are other programs that really only focus on certain sets of skills. So in answer to your question, how do I find transition programs? If you go on to the LDNDfoundation.com website, and you go to the top picks section from the toolbar across the top of the site, you will see that there are lists of transition, gap, travel, internship programs that either are exclusively for students who learn differently, or they address all of those developmental domains, and therefore students who learn differently as well as typical students. So you can see those programs listed, and you can click on the links and you can go to their sites directly. Many of them do informational webinars. You can contact the people who run those programs and have conversations and get a lot of information about which kinds of students are the right fit for those programs, and what are the goals that a family can expect their student will be targeting when they go to those kinds of programs. So that gives you just some information about where to go next.
So April, would now be a good time for you to go to the website. One of the other questions, connected to all this is, what questions should we be asking the colleges? Like, especially now that we're being able to go back out and start visiting the accessibility office and those resources, those services is so crucial when you're working with students, because they can shift and change if somebody leaves, then sometimes the whole program leaves with them, right? So
yeah.
So do you have a list of questions on there that we should be asking people, or how do you approach that?
Sure, I'm glad you asked that. I don't actually have a list of questions, but what I do have is a list of assessments that are recommended. I utilize assessments with students so that I can really get a very holistic, very broad and very deep perspective of who this student is. What's their personality? What are their multiple intelligences? What are their values? What are their interests? What are their skills? What kind of learning environment do they thrive in? And answering these questions through these assessments and then debriefing the results with a student and with their family really helps to deepen their self-knowledge, and not only understanding who they are, not in a vacuum, who they are in relation to other people, and looking at their family, their friends, their teachers, who they click with, who they don't click with. Finding out all of this information is highly qualitative, and then it enables me to go on to the next steps of saying, okay, based on what you've shared, let's look at what your strengths and what your challenges are, and what areas are weaknesses that we want to strengthen before you go on to college. So that's where I start, because when I do that checklist that I mentioned that I learned about from Judy Bass, looking at the readiness skills, and doing these assessments, then I get an idea of, does this student need some kind of a transition program before they can go on to college or not? So, you know, when you say, are there questions to ask, people wouldn't know how to answer if I said, are you college ready? Or if I said, do you need a transition program? Or what kind of transition program do you need? Families don't know yet. There will be some that can answer that, but a lot of them don't know. And so by doing the assessments and having conversations, they're able to then arrive at the answers to those questions organically through understanding, not through trying to think, well, okay, he needs this or he needs that, or this is what she had or didn't have in school. It's a lot more extensive. And learning supports in college go beyond just having accommodations or having an executive function coach or working in a social skills group. There are some colleges that actually have trained staff in the career services office so that when students who learn differently want to do an internship, they get specialized training and support in learning how to take your disability to an internship or how to find a job and how to interview after you finish college. There's even a school, McDaniel College in Maryland, that they have a program that trains students who learn differently on how to travel abroad. How do you go live and navigate life in another country, different culture, different food, different values? So, you know, there are a lot of different unique and special services that are offered, you know, at schools in this country. And so parents don't know that some of these things even exist, right? And so as I go through that process of the assessments and getting to know the student, I can then offer to them, when I get to the point of making a list of recommended transition programs or making the college list, that I highlight some of these specific special services that I think will really meet the student where they are and take them to the next level.
So creating a transition plan is that key, and that's why understanding what your learning differences, what accommodations you've had in high school, if any, and how those will apply in college. So all of that's part of a transition plan. What else goes into a transition plan, April?
Sure. So looking at the needs that the student has even outside of, you know, their learning differences, right? A lot of our students now are coming to college and they've done therapy. You know, they've had mental health issues. And so part of the transition is identifying for a student all of the different layers of support services that are available on a college campus and making sure that they go to the health center, you know, so that they know where to go if they have physical health problems or if they need to see a therapist where they can get mental health support. You know, they're also writing center and math center. And, you know, so there are a lot of places on the campus where students can go to get supports beyond just the accommodations and learning support services that they need. So part of that transition plan is making sure that if the student does visit the college in person, that they're going to all these places and they know where they are on the campus. And if they're not going in person, that they're at least reaching out to these different departments and making contact so that that can be a part of their knowledge base and their foundation for going to the college and being ready. Of course, you know, applying to a fee-for-service program or filling out an application and interviewing to get the services you need is all a huge part of the transition plan. And a lot of colleges will navigate that with students in the summer or the month or two before they enroll and go into the college. And so they come in and they already know who is my learning specialist going to be and what's my schedule going to be, you know, what kinds of things are they going to help me with. One of the accommodations that some colleges provide is priority registration. So students who are getting accommodations and learning support services get to choose their classes and register in advance of the rest of the college population, which is a huge, wonderful thing for our students, making sure they're taking courses with professors that, you know, have had students like them before that will support the accommodations that they get. All of these kinds of things are a really important part of the transition, and just really assessing what the student is anxious about, if they have anxiety, and what the family's concerned about, so that we can plan in advance so that they know, where do I go? What are the resources available to me to get the help that I need once I'm at college? You know, we want to create a supportive community before they get there. You know, typical students, may or may not visit a college. They get there, they took a tour, and they figure it out, you know, organically while they're a freshman. But for the students that I work with, I want to help scaffold as much as I can so that when they get there, the experience is new, it's exciting, it's overwhelming, but they already feel a sense of grounding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we all know that sometimes that's easier said than done, right? It's like,
yeah.
You know, and so we're going to go to a question that Magna brings up. And this is, Betsy just posted this as a question and a comment too. You mentioned some assessments that you use as a counselor, as a consultant. Are they ones that you've developed, or what assessments do you use, April?
Sure. So it's a great question. And, you know, everything that I'm going to talk about now is on the LDND Foundation website. So I just want to let you know that. And before I answer it, I also want to mention that I have a document that I've created, and I'm still working on it, to share more resources with you, specifically some links and some things. And so after this is over today, I know Cyndy is going to, you know, send out the recording to you, but if you go onto my foundation website and you subscribe and you communicate that you want to request the Friday Forum notes, I would be happy to share with you the document I've created so that you don't have to be rushing to write everything down and wondering about things. You know, and I'm going to take into account some of the questions you've asked, which I didn't necessarily anticipate before getting on. I'll make sure I include that information. So in terms of assessments, have I created any? I have taken some assessments that are more informal kind of assessments, checklists and surveys, and I've added my own questions to those assessments, but I also use a lot of assessments that have been created by other people and are fantastic just the way they are. So one of the things that I use is from NACAC, actually. NACAC has a middle school a document, and the name is really long, but again, this will be on that information sheet. And page 38 to 40 in this middle school pre-college planning document, they have a learning styles assessment. And so I use that with a student. Often they'll know I'm a visual learner, I'm an auditory learner, I'm kinesthetic or tactile, and sometimes they don't know, but even if they do, the questions that they answer help them give more in-depth information to understanding how that learning style that's their preference permeates how they think and how they learn. And on the contrary side, you know, the learning styles that are their least strong, the ones that are maybe weaknesses, it helps them understand what kinds of challenges they may face in college based on the fact that, okay, this particular learning style is a weakness for me. So that's one. The other ones that I use are actually the AchieveWorks bundle that's part of College Planner Pro. I don't use College Planner Pro. I recently actually signed up to use Counsel More, so I'm in the process of learning Counsel More. But the AchieveWorks bundle can also be purchased from eSources. And actually, if you're an IECA member and you go onto the technology resources page, you can get a discount to buy the bundle. You can buy for like 10 students. And the AchieveWorks assessments, the first one it has a couple different names. The Myers-Briggs Typology Indicator. Some of us know it as the 16 Personalities Test. And so that one is part of the AchieveWorks bundle. The next one, which I absolutely love, is Howard Gardner's Multiple Intelligences Assessment, because we've heard about intelligence and we've heard about emotional intelligence, but there are many other kinds of intelligences that people have. And so going through that assessment and learning what that means often helps students think about areas of interest, you know, in careers and that kind of thing too. The third assessment that's part of that bundle is a skills assessment, you know, looking at what skills a student has, what they're good at, and linking that with careers. And then also there's the learning and productivity section. And so what's really nice is students will often come to me and, you know, they think that they have bad habits, right? They listen to music while they study, or they like to eat while they're working, or they need to be moving and fidgeting. And when they go through these AchieveWorks assessments and they see the results, the parents have some concrete information that doing these things actually helps them to attend. It helps them to process. It helps them to think and to learn more effectively. So when I work with students, I let them know right up front, hey, if you need to have your cat in your lap, stroking your cat, because that helps you be calm and attentive, by all means, go grab your pet. If you need to be walking around your room, put in your AirPods and walk around the room while we talk. If you need to have food to snack on because that helps you, then that's what you should do. I'm encouraging them to do what they need to do so that they can have the best experience while we're on the call and they can get the most out of it. So those are assessments that I use. And then there are some surveys I do. I have a learning environment survey. I have a lifestyle survey. And I also have a really in-depth values assessment that I do with people. I have them identify their top career values, their top personal values. And when they identify a value, I have them write out a sentence about what that actually means. So for example, if someone says, in career, I value wealth. Well, what does wealth mean to you? Having enough money to own a home, having enough money, to own a car, having enough money to raise children. Everyone's definition for any particular value is different for them. So identifying what their values are and then coming up with synthesis statements. Now let's take a few different values and put them together. So okay, you want wealth, that's a career priority. What's a personal priority? Well, you want to have a lot of downtime and leisure time. So maybe your synthesis statement is something like, I'm looking for a career that will provide me with the financial means that are important to me while also leaving me enough free time to enjoy leisure activities. And so when they start to look at jobs and things, they can use these synthesis statements to see if they hold true to the career that they're investigating. So, there's a lot of other assessments that I've used too. I also have a license for Elevate. Elevate's a company that has the Myers-Briggs coupled with the Strong inventory. And the Strong inventory, it's an occupational assessment that really goes very in-depth into different careers and different work environments and different skills with different jobs for students who are ready for that. Some of these assessments like the Strong might not be something that you're going to do as a junior or senior in high school. It might be something that a student who comes back as a sophomore in college that says, okay, I really need to figure out my major. I really need to figure out some direction that they're ready for. So, with any assessments that you choose to use with your students, you really need to be subjective with the individual in front of you in making sure you're using assessments that are going to meet them where they are so that they can give you useful information. If it's over their heads, they're going to get frustrated and not know how to answer questions. And that brings me to another really important point is when I do assessments with students and when I do like interviewing during a session to get to know them, sometimes I have to clarify the answer that I'm looking for because a lot of our students, they've been beaten down and they have program answers that they think are what you're looking for, that they think are going to make you happy or think highly of them. And I want to know the truth, so sometimes they might be self-conscious about the habits I talked about before, a student that needs to be moving around their room while they're doing work. And I'll say, how well are you able to concentrate, in a classroom when you're seated? And they're like, well, I have to sit still. Like, that's not the answer I'm looking for, right? I want them to know they can be honest and actually tell me it's really hard to sit still. These are things I need to help me sit still, or I need to take breaks so I can move around, stuff like that. So again, there's a full list of a lot of assessments on the website. So I will show you where that is.
Okay. While you're doing that, I will just add, it sounds like the surveys and assessments are mutually beneficial for both neurotypical students and neurodivergent students, because a lot of the things, the learning styles, values, all those things are going to apply to any student, but being able to have, as you said, preface them or help students to understand that you're looking for what's truly about them instead of what they think the pat answer is. I think that's really an important aspect. Carol asked about, have you used UScience? I know I've used UScience, and one of the things I like about UScience, it's the only assessment or inventory that I know of that actually looks at aptitudes. It's not self-reported. And I think that is a huge difference for students. So have you noticed, do you have any thoughts or comments on that, April?
You know, to be honest with you, I know a lot of people love UScience, and I haven't used it yet. I mean, I've been using the other ones, and it's actually on my list of something that I want to check out. And for the reason that you mentioned, aptitudes. I do think it's important for people to realize that there are going to be a lot of students who, the kinds of aptitudes that they need to have to do a certain career, they haven't developed yet, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have to kind of take it as it's preliminary information, you know, and I'll often say to families when we do assessments, like, this is the baseline of where you are right now. And any of these things can move, you know, along a continuum as you develop confidence, as you have experience, you know. And, you know, the other challenge that I sometimes have with giving students, like, these are the career matches for your personality, your intelligences, your skills. There's a whole wide world of work out there that our students don't know exists. Many, many jobs that they've never heard about. And careers and industries are constantly changing. New things are constantly starting. And so I really want students to be open-minded. And I don't want them to think, like, let me anchor down and focus on finding what I'm going to major in and what my career is based on what I'm confident and competent in right now. Like, we want them to be open. You know, we all know that a lot of students go to college and they change their mind about what they're going to do because they're growing and they're evolving and they're realizing, oh, this is out there. When I went to college as an undergraduate student, I thought I wanted to be a television radio major, and I didn't get into that. And I ended up being a public speaking communications major with a theater minor. And I graduated from college, and I worked as a youth group director and did some other things. And ultimately, I learned about speech pathology, and that's what I ended up going back for. But the entire time that I was growing up and that I was in college, I really didn't know much about speech pathology. It wasn't on my radar. I discovered it later, right? And so this is something to realize. And even if a student goes to college saying, this is what I want to do, people change careers. I was a speech pathologist, then I was a real estate agent, and now I'm an IEC, and who knows what I'll be in 20 years, you know, if I'm still on the planet. But I think it's important too.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think a lot of people have that same feeling. So let's, I know our time is just wheezing by here. Let's go to the website and have you share your screen. You should be able to share your screen. Let's go back to talking about neurodivergent students. But Betsy brings up a good question. So while you're pulling that up, she's, you know, runs into a situation that we all do. I also have, my husband had a learning difference. My son has learning difference. And so we've all faced this with students or family members. They don't want to be different. They don't want to go to college and have accommodations, or, you know, as Betsy said, they don't want to feel like they're not like all the other kids. So what kind of advice or message do you give to parents to help give to students rather, to help them to look at it from a different angle or different perspective?
Sure. Well, going through the interviewing process and the assessments process, I learn a lot about the students' extracurricular activities. I learn about their values. I learn about their gifts as a human being, you know, and what they're interested in. And so I highlight a lot of those positives. You know, I come from a strengths-based place when we talk about disabilities and when we talk about supports. And something that I have said to parents for decades as a speech pathologist when they would be upset, you know, or concerned that, well, my kid wants to play a sport, but he's got to go to speech therapy twice a week and occupational therapy, and then he needs to see, you know, his therapist. And I would say your child is learning about the reality of how to struggle and how to accept that you have struggles and how to access the resources and inner tools to come through that struggle and become stronger. And I say to parents, some kids, they walk through life and they're gliding. Things just come easily and naturally to them. Someday something's going to be challenging, or they're going to have some kind of event or experience or trauma, and they're going to have to learn how to be resilient. They're going to have to learn how to ask for help. They're going to have to learn how to love themselves and be patient with themselves through something that's new and different and difficult. And the other huge piece is when you have struggles and you have to work to overcome them, you become an empathetic, kind, compassionate human being, which makes it easier for you to relate to other people who have any kinds of difficulties. So I try to highlight all of the character building traits and all of the maturity and the sensitivity and the intuitiveness that comes out of having to struggle and work through challenges. And everybody has challenges, all of us do. And I think that oftentimes parents and students who learn differently, they forget that other people have challenges. If somebody has a communication disorder in the way that they speak, they articulate and they mispronounce sounds, or they have a stutter, they're just fluent. It's obvious, right? You can hear that when you talk to them. But a lot of people have challenges and difficulties that are on the inside that we don't see. You can look at somebody who their body looks thin and healthy, and they might have an eating disorder like anorexia or bulimia, and you wouldn't know it looking at them. Someone could have an ulcer, someone could suffer from migraines, right? People have all kinds of differences, and that's what makes us unique. And, so those are some of the things that I try to highlight, in working with students. I'm always applauding their achievements, whether they're big or small, and celebrating that. And the other thing too is when families will say, my student has kids and they're friendly, but they don't really have friends. When you go to a school that has other kids like you instantly have that bond of people who can relate to you, that you can relate to because you've struggled through the same thing. And I say to parents, part of finding the right fit college personally and socially is going to a school where the communities you're a part of now will exist. So your community might be that you're Catholic. Your community might be you're LGBTQ. Your community might be that, you're a math geek. Your community might be that you have autism or you have dyslexia. So it's just all a part of the holistic picture of who you are. It's one piece of who you are. It's not, this is all that you are. And I think sometimes families and students get stuck in so much focus on the disability, the difference, that they forget and lose sight of all the other components of who they are as a human being.
Oh, I totally agree. Well said. I love the fact that you said coming from a strengths-based place, and that's that's the message that we want to convey. And oftentimes parents have been advocates for their children for so many years that they can see that, but sometimes their children can't. So, okay, so you've got your website. Go to the front page for us so people can see. So it's ldndfoundation.com. I put that in the show notes as well. In the chat. I'll put it in the show notes as well. But so is this the front page?
So this is the front page. And just to clarify that LD stands for learning differences and ND stands for neurodiversity. And the reason why it's learning differences and not learning disability is because disability as a term is going out. Unfortunately, that's what the diagnosis is, a learning disability, but I didn't want that word in the title of, my foundation. So, okay, so the home page, this is the home page.
April, I'm just seeing, click here for our short videos, and I'm just seeing a little small segment of your page.
Oh, okay. Let's see, how can I make it bigger so it's only small?
Yeah, we're just seeing a narrow band, and all it says is click here for our short videos. That's all I'm seeing.
Let me try. I don't know. Maybe I should do it again.
Yeah,
because I just logged into it, and it's my full screen. Did you gave me? Well, yeah, you gave me screen sharing privileges.
Okay. Here, let me share my screen.
Okay. Yeah, you can just pull it up and
yeah, and
I'll
then
go through it that way. Sure.
Okay, people, let me know if you're seeing.
Yeah.
Is everybody seeing
Yeah.
the full page now? Let's see. Okay, are you guys seeing this? Because before I was just seeing here for. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
People are seeing
Okay.
it. We're good now.
All
Okay.
Right. So
I'm
now
just gonna give you like a brief of what is in the different sections. So this is the homepage. You can scroll
before
through
you do that.
Oh, sorry.
Tell us why you founded this, why you started this.
Yeah. So actually that's answered in the first section, which is evolution of an LDND foundation. I started this because in the work that I'm doing, it's families who have the financial resources, that are savvy, that know that there are IECs who specialize in working with neurodivergent students, that come for help. And there is a massive population of students and families out there that won't find their way to an IEC. Either they don't know about it, they can't afford it. And so I wanted to create a space where the accurate, comprehensive, quality programs, providers, services that are out there for students navigating higher education can come to one place and find that information. So the purpose of the site is to give that information at no cost to families and students. I also truly hope that a lot of high school counselors will use the site, and of course IECs and any other professionals that are working with students who learn differently. The second reason why I created the site is there are amazing professionals, there are amazing colleges, support programs, transition programs, products, services that are out there to support students. And again, I wanted one collective place where families can go and find all that information. So as you can see, across the toolbar on the top next to home, it says for students and families, and there's a drop down, and you don't need to click on it, Cyndy. I'm just going to tell them. And then the next thing is the for professionals. So if you are a parent or a student, then you would click on the for students and families. And if you're a professional, you go here. And so this will then lead you, when you hit the find out more button, it's going to take you to the top pick section. And the top pick section, you can see it also across the top to the far right of the toolbar. This is where I have the list, the amazing list of all of the different kinds of transition programs, associate's degree programs, and four-year degree schools that have robust learning supports or a fee-for-service program. So this table of contents page gives you a list of what's to come. And then as you scroll down, you can see. So the first one is programs under a year. So these are certificate programs. They're very hands-on, experiential learning kind of programs. Now, they're not developed for students who learn differently, but students who learn differently, often if they're looking for something that's not a sit down for hours to learn and develop work competence, these are great options for them. So I have 2 pages of a lot of different certificate programs. And once you get through those, the next section is the transition programs, travel and internship programs. And so again, all of the ones that are listed here have either been created specifically for neurodivergent students, or they're for typical kids and they have components created for students who learn differently. So you can see there's travel abroad programs, there's internship programs here, and the information, you know, I give the link to the site, I give the name of the director, I give a little bit of explanation, the program mission, so that you can get some information and then go and explore more. And then the transition programs, and a lot of these programs, a huge focus is helping students get ready for college. So it's working on executive function skills, academic skills, social skills, independent living skills, while being away somewhere. So there are a lot of programs listed. And then we get to the AA degrees. And so these are schools that have programs, again, with learning supports or fee for service for students who learn differently and want to get an associate's degree. And then the next section, which is about 7 or 8 pages long. It breaks it down by region of the country where there are colleges that have, again, robust learning support or a fee-for-service program that provides support. So students can come on here and click through and go, okay, I want to see what's in New England, or I want to see what's in the Midwest, or the Southeast. So they can scroll through. And then if you'll just keep going, Cyndy, we'll go to the next section, which is the last section I currently have uploaded in here. And the next section is LGBTQ friendly colleges. And so it's really important for students that need learning support to identify what's their other must-have criteria on a campus. So this is, where I started, because a lot of students that I've worked with, especially students on the spectrum, are on the autistic spectrum, are on the LGBTQ spectrum as well. So if a student needs a school that meets them where they're at for both of those communities, these schools are a great place to start. And I have my own little ranking system for the highest ranking LGBTQ support, and then highly, and then high. Basically, I kind of identified 10 criteria that can exist on a campus to support LGBTQ students, and I included that in here. I will be adding other pages that take schools with the strong learning support, coupled with another variable, coupled with STEM programs, coupled with visual and performing arts, coupled with this is a great school for students on the spectrum. So those are things that I'm all working on, and they'll be added when there turns out to be an 8th day added to the week, so that I have more time to do all that. So that is the top pick section. I also want to highlight, yes, Cyndy, go ahead. You can hit the LDND Foundation on the toolbar. Mm-hmm. This is a section that those of you who are counselors will want to take a look at. So I talk about why I did it, what the purpose of the site is, how it's going to help professionals and families. And by the way, that little infinity symbol with the rainbows, that is the official symbol for neurodivergence. And then if you scroll down, yeah, there it is. If you scroll down, there's also some information about the different terminology that you're going to come across, neurodivergence, neurodiversity, and then how I came to the name of the foundation. And then you can keep scrolling. And then I have some frequently asked questions so that people can get a little bit more insight into what they will and won't learn from the website. And who are the professionals that guide students on educational planning? Will the website tell me everything I need to know? Absolutely not. I make it really clear that working with an IEC who's qualified is important. And then there's also the question of what disabilities aren't covered on the site and why. So you're not going to find information pertaining to intellectual disabilities or physical disabilities or some other kinds. It's really focused on learning differences and neurodivergence. And then this section, I actually created this page. Sorry, go back up, Cyndy. The page on with the 3 students on the top, eyes covered, ears covered, mouth covered. I developed that in your class. That was an assignment to provide information about the laws that impact working students getting supports in college, as well as the different levels of support that colleges provide. So this page is a very content-dense, factual page for families and for IECs. And then if you scroll down, I have a whole bunch of statistics related to what percentage of the population of students have learning differences, diagnosed disabilities, what kind of supports do they get, quotes about or statistics about the stigma, of having a disability and disclosing it and going to college. And then even some information about workplace. There are a lot of employers that really support and are proactive about hiring students who are neurodivergent.
Everybody, thank you, April, again. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend, and I will see you back here in about 2 weeks.